It's finally here. We've been waiting and begging Ubiquiti to make a NAS forever, and here it is, bringing with it a whole new UniFi app called UniFi Drive. Let's take a look. Along the front of the unit, you'll notice that it looks very similar to the UNVR Pro, with the same number of drives and the same layout, the same 1.3-inch screen. Over here, you've got a gigabit Ethernet and a 10 gigabit fiber port for a DAC connection. For those who aren't familiar with these drives, these are your standard Ubiquiti hard drive bays. Has instructions on both the front and the back. Essentially, if you've got a larger hard drive, like I've got several of these, you're going to take it out of the wrapping and pop it directly into the drive. And then the drive itself, once it's loaded, slots directly back into the unit and pops in like that. All right, let's get it in the rack and power it up. It appears I have a bit of a problem. As you can see, I have the PDU Pro on the bottom there in the back, taking up the last two slots, the last two U in my toolless mini rack. Wonder how that's going to fit when trying to put in the UNAS Pro. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Just barely. Now, for the purpose of this test, I'm going to be using 4 8-terabyte Seagate Iron Wolf drives. Now, if you've never done one of these before, it's real simple. You make sure that the connection end is pointing on the outward direction. You slot it in on one side, line up the holes, snap, done. 10 gig DAC cable that I'm putting in over there, and I'm going to slot it into one of these over here on my 48 port switch. The USW Pro Max, that's upside down, good job. Okay, now we've got blinky light over there. Let's get our drives in and locked and ready to go. And get my phone to begin configuring. It would help if I was actually broadcasting a Wi-Fi network, which is what happens when you're testing. You forget what's plugged in and not plugged into the rack. Okay, as you can see on the screen, UNAS Pro has been found. I'm going to connect it and call it Studio NAS. Oops. Next. And as you can see here, we've got disks 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all 8 terabytes and are healthy. Preferred storage and protection policy. Your UNAS Pro will be optimized to best suit your needs. Select the storage and protection policy. Basic protection with large storage space, or higher protection with limited storage space, and the option for a hot spare. If you click on the little tooltip here, you get the definition between those two. Basic protection, a single drive is used for data redundancy. You are going to need 2 for RAID 1 configuration and 3 for RAID 5. Higher protection is it will only use half of your drives and the other half will be saved for failover. I'm going to live dangerously and go with the basic protection, so that gives me a whole lot of storage. Setting up UniFi OS. Time elapsed so far, 1:20. Setup is complete. Please open unifi.ui.com on a desktop to manage the UNAS Pro. One important thing I forgot to do was to take off the little sticker over the touchscreen. There we go. Now you can see on the screen here that there's basic protection. We're using 2.2 gig out of 23 terabytes. You can see what's being stored there. If you swipe through, just like any of the other menus on the other devices, you can get your drive information and see that the drive here is just initializing size, temperature, bad sector count, etc. You can get your storage activity, so you can see what this is running through right now. The system is using 15% of the CPU and 26% of the 8 gig of RAM that's inside this thing. Throughput internet it sees is just fine. And it's 46 degrees Celsius, also known as 114 degrees Fahrenheit. No IP on port 1, IP on port 2, which is our DAC. Uptime, hardware version, storage, etc. Last thing here is the settings, brightness, make it 100%, why not? Background color, and your shutdown and restart settings. All right, now I'm going to go into the back end and let this run its update, and then we will continue on the desktop interface. All right, welcome to the Drive app, which in my opinion is really the star of the show. It's very well thought out. It has a lot of amazing details. No, it does not run third-party apps such as Plex or any of the other things that some of the competitor applications do run simply because that's not what it is designed for. It is designed for a NAS. It is not designed for anything else. It is not designed to replace something like a Synology, which is made to run other apps as a platform, such as Plex. This is straightforward, business-focused file storage. It also does not run NVR. You're going to want NVR to run an NVR software for the Ubiquiti cameras, and unfortunately, it also doesn't back up the NVR, which I would like it to be able to do in the future. Hopefully, Ubiquiti will add the ability to back up to either on-prem or via the cloud to another location from another UNAS Pro at another location. All right, without further ado, let's dive in. This will look familiar to anybody who's used Ubiquiti software anytime recently. And just to run through the dashboard over here, you've got on the left-hand side your drive information, storage, which drives are running, what they're doing, etc., which port you're using. So I'm using the 10 gigabit fiber port with a DAC cable connected directly into my switch, so I get that full 10 gig traffic capability right there. I'm running UniFi OS 4.1.5 as well as Drive 1.16.2, and the release notes are, of course, available on the little notes icon next to both of those. Next is the backups, which I'll set up in a second. File services, this is how you can access it directly from Finder on a Mac or Explorer on Windows. And Time Machine here is enabled. Time Machine is the ability on a Mac to automatically back up your computer to an external drive. Unfortunately, there is no Windows option for this yet, although I do understand that there are other solutions planned soon. Next, it shows you how many active users you have and what active file services credentials you have, as well as what those users have been doing, if they're logging in, etc., to be able to see if they're actually utilizing the device or not. Over on the right-hand side, you've got your throughput metrics, which is relatively low right now because this is brand new, but that's going to spike quite significantly when I start loading on hundreds and thousands of gigabytes, aka terabytes, of files onto this device. And then you have your drives and snapshot settings capabilities over here. So if you have, 35 drives over here, you're going to see a list of them and be able to see what's going on with those, how much space they're taking up, and so on. Over on the left-hand side, you have your all files, which is a web interface to enable you to jump directly into the files themselves, as you can see me clicking around here. Then you have a trash. One thing to note with the trash is this only works for the web interface. So if you are accessing via Explorer or via Finder, aka SMB, and you trash something over there, it's gone. It is in the trash. It's not in the trash. It is gone forever, immediately deleted. This is something that they are going to be addressing soon. It is a priority on the roadmap, and stay tuned for that. But right now, be warned before you go and delete something from your SMB share. Then you've got your system log, which is normal for Ubiquiti products, so you can see who's doing what, which is kind of important given that you're dealing with, enterprise files and so on. Storage information, backups, snapshots, services, and host for all of those, and then your settings area here, which goes into more information. So we're going to go through all of this. Let's start back from the top here and start with backups, because honestly, that's pretty important. This takes us back into the settings screen, so let's continue going through this area here. You can set up a task name. What do you want to call this? Primary backup. Primary backup, right? And then you can choose what data you want to back up. I'm just going to choose everything because, quite frankly, I want to have everything redundant offsite. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. This is really cool. Remote UNAS. If you have a second Ubiquiti NAS Pro at another site, you're going to be able to select it here. I do not, unfortunately, so you don't get to see anything populated here. But if you've got one at the office and one at home, you're going to be able to replicate that at a certain time on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and sync those up or back up to that other location, so that, God forbid, something happens at the office or at one of your sites, you're able to have that data immediately accessible somewhere else. You can also back up to a CIFS or SMB server, and my personal favorite, which I'll be using, Google Drive. For Google Drive, you just want to link it to your account, and then it I can show you actually. Let me do this in another window. Essentially, you click on that link and you enter the code. In this case, my code is that. Let's paste this in. No, I'm not going to show you the authorization here because that would give away way too much of my personal info. I'm allowing it to see, edit, and delete only the specific Google Drive files that I need with the app, and I'm giving it access. Continue. It says continue on device. So this should refresh momentarily. There it goes, and you can see, well, I'll have to blur out my email here, but you can see that it is connected to Google Drive, and the folder is going to be a direct folder on in my drive called UniFi Drive _ Studio NAS, which is great and interestingly a little bit different than how the folders show up for if you're backing up with Google Drive Synced, or the Google Drive Sync tool, I believe it's called, which will create a separate section in your Google Drive account where it actually says backed up computers. In this case, it's just a folder, which honestly is a little bit better because I find the folders themselves easier to access in the Google Drive interface, and both on mobile and on desktop, as well as in the Google Drive Sync tool, ironically. You have two options here: folder update, which keeps the destination server data that doesn't match the names of the imported source files, or folder replacement, which says all destination server files will be replaced by the source data. So total overwrite there. You can schedule when you want it to happen, so daily, weekly, monthly, when it's going to occur, etc. We can set mine for, yeah, sure, let's do it for, 10, let's see, I'm filming this now at 10:50, so let's do this at 11 p.m., and let's check back in a couple of minutes and see when it runs. Run at daily. Create task. Oh, I can initiate one now. Sure. Before I upload an enormous amount of data to it. And just to show you over here in my Google Drive, my drive, UniFi Drive _ NAS, or Studio NAS, you can see the Studio NAS primary folder, and the backup has already begun, so you can see Jesse's drive. And there you go. Here's the files. Nothing's in there yet because it only just started the backup, but it has created the folder structure there. And you'll be able to have that accessible anywhere that you can access Google Drive, which is awesome. Now, since we've created that task, you're able to see the status of it. Right now, it's at 2%. It's, like I said, just created the folder structure. The next backup will be tomorrow at 4 p.m. I'm going to have to check the time zone on that because I'm not sure why it's at 4 p.m. even though I said 11 p.m. We will have to take a look at that shortly. Yeah, so that's basically the screen. Snapshots is slightly different here. We're going to be able to set this up so that we can get more granular and be able to, instead of a backup, which is an all-at-once recovery, snapshots allow you to individually grab just, from the last hour or certain files and bring those back individually. So let's create a snapshot here, daily, also 11 a.m. and, or 11 p.m. rather. Duh. And have this run, snapshot limit 128, sure, why not? And let's apply changes. So now that one is scheduled and ready to go, and again, it says 4 p.m. So we're gonna have to check the time zone on that. Not sure why it's showing that time instead of nearly 11 p.m. Shared links, again, this is anywhere that you're going to have a shared link. I'll show you shared links when we go back into the file interface shortly. Services, this is the web access, so this is what the address is on my network, as well as SMB, Time Machine, and NFS settings. Oops. One of the things that I wanted to highlight here is that NFS is actually supported. A lot of people were commenting on various Reddit threads that it wasn't, and they were very upset about that fact. You are able to turn it on and learn how to, go away, keeper, and learn how to mount that on your Linux desktop and so on. Now, again, this isn't going to support something like Plex because this isn't meant to be a host for third-party apps. It's meant to be a enterprise NAS, supposed to store your files. That's it. And of course, you can encrypt your drive with your encryption password and so on. Now, like most of the other Ubiquiti products, you've got push notifications, two different layers here. This is for application level, so for Drive. For control plane push notifications, you can click there or view it in the control plane. But you can get notified for things like sign-in failed, or a drive activated, or backup, inaccessible, or having problems, or things like that. And so, all good things here. Customize it as you will, and always important to have good notifications when something goes right or something goes wrong. Control plane, again, should look familiar to anybody who's used Ubiquiti software lately. You can see I'm using the UNAS Pro on the versions I mentioned before, which release channel I'm on, and so on. Backups, now you are able to see that I'm backing up to Ubiquiti's cloud. This is, again, control plane, so this is the OS backup, not the files backup. And I can set it to backup now or automatically, and if need be, I can restore during the initial console setup from a backup. Storage information shows that I'm syncing my storage now, which makes sense because, again, it's relatively new and just still getting set up. This is how it's configured with basic protection. I can switch to higher protection if I want, and I can enable a hot spare. Hot spare is an extra drive that you have ready to go if one fails, and it's not usable until you swap it in. And then you've got your individual disk information here. You can click onto each of these and see what it's reporting about them. These are all initializing because, again, brand new. And of course, if you have an issue with your drives, be very careful with this reformat button, but you can wipe out all of the data on your drives and permanently erase everything and start fresh, which I did for the purpose of this demo. And then again, for anyone who's used Ubiquiti before, this will look familiar. This is your admin control plane, where you've got admins and manage roles. You've got your users and identity endpoint, which was automatically activated for me when I set this up, actually. So that is pretty cool and something that you definitely should be taking a look at because it makes things so much easier for end users. All right, going back to the dashboard here, you'll notice that things have changed a little bit. Your backups now show that we have tasks right here, and we can actually just click through to, again, set another backup task there if we wanted a different one. And then you can also see that the snapshot schedule now shows that is set 4 p.m., 11 p.m., where's the time zone on this thing? Let's just go and check that real quick. This should be in control plane, I believe. Console, United States. It's set to Los Angeles. I'm not sure why it's showing 4 p.m. Maybe that's when I set it up. Don't know. Well, in 3 minutes, that's going to run again, and we can take another look. But that is essentially the gist of the layout here. Again, all files, you can go into the drive and you can see what's here, etc. This is all things that video files that I filmed for the Google Chrome Summit that we did, and the preview is unavailable, but you can download and rename, duplicate, move, download, etc. All right, let's connect to this and actually start moving a mess load of files in there. So this is what the web interface looks like if you wanted to connect directly as a user, and you're able to go into here and utilize this just like you would Google Drive or OneDrive, and it's the same thing we saw before, and you can change the interface, but you'll notice that the admin side of things is missing, is gone, because this is not the admin view, this is the end user view. You can see the time of the server here is 10:58, and the services that we've got over here, and the shared drive. So that's basically the difference between the user and the admin panel. Now let's bring up Finder window. All right, now let's test moving some files in. Here's a 142 gigabyte folder, and let's move this over here so you can see it's copying 77 items, 142 gig in about 21 minutes. And if you actually look at the activity screen on the device, you can see how fast it's going. Here it's pretty accurate, actually. Trying to see here. Let's take a look. So it doesn't update as quickly here as it does on the device, but whoop, police are out in force. It's Halloween night. Yikes. The way you can see the uptick in write data that is coming through on the graph over here. This folder that I'm moving from is on an external hard drive connected via Thunderbolt, and I'm connected to the UNAS Pro via 2.5 gig Ethernet to the network, and then the network is connected over the 10 gig DAC cable to the UNAS. So there are multiple jumps in there, and it is copying over from an external Thunderbolt drive. In theory, the limitation there would be the processing of copying the files, because I'm not moving them, I am copying them, but also the 2.5 gig NIC. Theoretically, it could go faster than that, but I don't have the capability of testing that because I don't have a 10 gig NIC in my computer. NIC being the network control card, for those who are not familiar with that acronym. Actually, you know what? I'm going to stop that. I'm going to go for a much bigger... Let's copy this folder over. This is nearly 700 gig of files, and it says it's going to take about an hour, no, 2 hours. Apple is usually pretty good at calculating these things, but it does take a minute. So you can see 668.21 gigabytes, and the throughput is about to go through the roof on this once it ramps up and starts copying. As with everything, your mileage may vary depending on the files that you're transferring, your network setup, your network speeds, your computer speed, and so on and so forth. But for a fresh setup on a local, smallish network with all of the specifics that I just mentioned before, it is a really nice setup. And honestly, I think I'm going to have to do a test here to see if I can edit Final Cut Pro 4K video directly via the network on the NAS. I think that'll be really interesting to see. So let's let this transfer and then we'll jump over to that. All right, we're going to let that run for a while because, as you can see, that's going to take a little bit because I am transferring an enormous amount of data over there. I was getting better speeds earlier when I was doing it directly from the laptop, so that's a whole different test. Feel free to go and test that out on your own. But now that that is uploading, let's go and check it out in here. You've got the editing folder, and this was me doing some testing on the AI Pro. Obviously, things are still processing and importing, so you're not able to see them just yet. And now that there's real traffic going through this thing, you can see both read and write are spiking significantly as it onloads data and is viewing the data from here. It is now past 11 o'clock, so you should be able to see, I think, that the backup and the snapshot completed, although the snapshot may have waited until tomorrow. Let's check our backup tasks. That's at 0%, which means it probably, 43%. Okay, so it's still backing that up, and it's probably going to be a while because it's the initial backup and it's a significant amount of files. I am going to have to keep an eye on that because I'm now uploading nearly a terabyte of files as a test, and that's going to start taking up a lot of space. If we refresh the Google Drive window over here, we should see a lot more files in here. Yep, there we go. So now this has all been uploaded and is in processing with Google. Here's my review on the USW Mini. Again, these were uploaded via the backup and I didn't have to touch it, and if I needed these files elsewhere, whenever the backup is set up to run, as long as it's after that fact, I would be able to get them from my Google Drive interface. And if something, God forbid, happened to my studio and the NAS no longer was operational, I'd be able to get all of my files directly from here. So fantastic. All right, that wraps up my first look here. The UNAS Pro starts at $499 and starts shipping on Monday, November the 4th, and does not include drives. So keep that in mind. You are going to need different drive. You are going to need to purchase drives for this, and that will depend on what your needs are. I've got 4 drives in there that are 8 terabytes each. Ubiquiti sells drives that you can buy directly from them, or you can buy Western Digital or other brand drives such as Seagate, which is the ones that I'm using. Generally, it's good practice to make sure that they are NAS rated and are running at 7200 RPM in order to be the fastest possible speeds. If you do purchase this, I'd appreciate it if you used my link down below. It is an affiliate link and it helps to support the channel. Let me know your questions down below, and thanks for watching.